10 seconds. I've got my phone on me because you and I will watch each other on Zoom, and then I'll have Facebook Live here and look for questions.
Okay, sounds wonderful.
All right, we are almost there. And meeting is now streaming live on Facebook. Welcome everyone to Hemp Your Health. This is a show dedicated to health, healing, and prevention. We bring on experts so they can share their wisdom, intelligence, and knowledge and contribute to the betterment of humans, animals, plants, and the planet. The intention of this show is to learn, honor, and engage with our distinguished guest and celebrate his contributions to what we all love about cannabis: its safety, its transparency, and its health benefits. Our guest today is the distinguished Professor Manny Johnson. He is an industrial hemp nutraceutical specialist and medical cannabis consultant and third generation farmer. He is passionate about the world's citizens and helping us live a better life and provide a world that would also contribute to the betterment of humans. Manny graduated from the U.S. Military Academy at West Point. He continued his service with veterans and is a charter member of Rally Point LLC. And this provides jobs, skills, and employment for veterans. This is so important. And in 2016, one of his studies was instrumental in demonstrating that veterans with service dogs were 67% less likely to commit suicide with a dog by their side. He's a third generation farmer and has 30 years experience as professional Florida nurseryman. He is a co-founder of the largest specialties and floral nurseries in the US with facilities in Florida, Germany, and China. Manny is a master arborist and a member of the prestigious Nippon Bonsai Society, and he even has bonsais displayed at the US National Arboretum. Manny's extensive education and background include biochemistry, medical microbiology, research of veterinary medicine, and extensive plant cultivation. And as medical cannabis is on the horizon, he's able to take a deep dive into this subject matter and contribute to what became him being sought after as an expert in this emerging field. And then he is educated all over the US, Europe, and South America. He has worked with Dr. Raphael Mechoulam and the leading medical experts and doctors to serve and to contribute to the foundation of everything that is happening today in cannabis. He is a professor and has contributed to the laws and legality and the safety in the laws of Florida. And I love this about you, Manny. Your mantra is medicines cannot have poisons. Pesticides are poisons. He has teamed up with distinguished individuals and produced the first USDA certified organic cannabis in Colorado. We will be digging into this. He formed an LLC called Can. And with the leadership of his leadership in the best minds in medicine, we are learning that cannabis can produce medicines that are safe for patients and individuals for health, healing, and ultimately to live a better life. Manny, my dear friend, it is an honor to have you here.
Thank you so much that's a pretty, I never think about stuff in the past, to be honest with you. So it's interesting. Thank you so much for being on the show. I I was telling them, I was talking with a friend about the first time I met you at a show and how passionate you were about what you were doing to make this a safe and effective product for human consumption. And that's what caught my attention. That's why I stood at your booth and I talked to you and I said, hey, this stuff kind of works and this stuff kind of doesn't work in terms of the science behind it. And so I love the idea that you're doing these shows. I wish we could get a broader audience. That's my goal here, is to get a broader audience. And I'm going to introduce you to other shows that come on so that we can maybe get, something that can really, really educate people and get away from some of the noise of sensationalism that's gotten into social media of all kinds.
I love that. You are the first person that shared with me how toxic a lot of the cannabis/marijuana plants are because they're grown with pesticides. I think you shared this a statistic that 85% of marijuana is grown with pesticides, if not illegal pesticides. Do you want to elaborate on that and some of the current research that you've been finishing and delving into?
Well, this goes back. I got into hemp in 2012. One of my partners has been growing industrial hemp. He started off in Canada in 1979. And is a professional nurseryman also. We both grow organically. My great-grandfather taught me to grow tomatoes bigger than his hand. They didn't have fertilizers back then. They didn't have pesticides. They had to learn how to do it the natural way, nature's way to do it. Okay, a lot of this comes from American Indians. Okay, and so we've worked very, very tightly with Indians, and we are right now. We're working with Indian tribes down in Indiantown. That's where our major focus is. Okay, I kind of got into the medical field. I was working on an MD, PhD degree, like you said, in medical microbiology and biochemistry. And I moved to LA to, this was sort of to cure some of the stuff from the military that was creating the PTSD and the bad dreams. I moved to UCLA and I got in the film industry. And I made 2 documentary films. One of them was about child brides, that were girls that were being sold at 12 years old for money to pay off debts around the world. And another one was Brave Miss World, where these both were on Netflix. The United Nations picked them up, sent us to film festivals all over the world. And I ran across a mother who had a child with Dravet syndrome. And boy, did that catch my attention, because she was $1 million in debt. She had no one to turn to. She called me on the phone and she just said, I don't know what to do. Could you? And it was just funny because I was visiting my mom, and from LA, I had a place in Orlando also, and I was visiting my mother in a nursing home. And she said, could you come to the hospital tonight and just sit with me?
Oh.
And I thought, geez, yeah, I'll do that. And so I literally spent the entire night in the hotel or the hospital room with her daughter, who had, and in the medical community's infinite wisdom, they thought, okay, if we take half her brain out, she'll have half the seizures. So they removed half her brain. Okay, anybody who's got any knowledge of anything with genetic disorders or epigenesis is going to realize within a certain period of time, the body's going to come back to that homeostasis of that disease. And sure, 3 months later, she's back with 100 and something seizures a day. She was wearing diapers, 11 years old. Mother has $1 million in medical bill debt, totally broken. And I'm watching the nurses around the bed just standing there. There was like 3 nurses standing there. And they said, there's nothing else we can give her.
Wow.
This doctor comes in and he's like the god of this hospital. Okay. And he's got 3 or 4, you know, women behind him and guys behind him that are writing down everything he says. And he's the one who had made that decision. And he and I had a nice conversation that night and did not leave friends. But the point is I got to see her. And I got to see, I got with some friends in Colorado who were, you know, we're talking kind of whether this stuff was legal or not. I don't want to really get into that at the point, but we went up to the mountain. And when people go up to the mountain, even in screenplays, something magical happens.
Yes.
When Moses went up to the mountain, he brought the 10 Commandments back. Okay, we went to the mountain and we brought this oil back and we based it on Rick Simpson's original oils. Okay, within 3 days, 3 or 4 drops under the child's tongue. And I mean, this stuff tasted terrible. But the mother got it in her mouth. After 3 days, the child sort of just fell back on the couch and stopped shaking and looked at us. And I had a film from UCLA that I worked with, okay, that came there to film that. And I'm telling you, there was not a dry eye in the room. I still get emotional over it because it was so amazing. That's what when I said, I'm going to get involved in this because I'm watching people grow this stuff. I'm going into dispensaries where it was starting to become legal. And I'm seeing these bottles of landscape pesticides and insecticides and fungicides. And I'm going, you know, guys, you can't, you know, I know you're used to growing with like tinfoil all over the windows in a house, you know, and you're not, you don't know anything about pesticides and you get a bug and you start to spray with that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, these things cannot be put on anything for human consumption. They are landscape pesticides. They're for the plants in front of your house. So I am, that was the first thing. I would speak before, I mean, I was at the very first Colorado cannabis clinicians and there was the newspapers there. And this was in some old wooden 2-story, maybe 3-story building in Denver. And I met some of the most fabulous people in the world in cannabis that were kind of hidden because these were doctors that were off the grid because the medical society threw them off the, you know, pushed them off the you know, any type of a normal relationship. And so I listened to them and I thought how magnificent this was. And so the first thing I did, okay, Colorado asked me to do some work with their pesticide department. And this is not me, okay? What I have a tendency to do is to surround myself with the best people in the world in what they do. I don't care how much it costs. Like I found a retired professor, chairman emeritus of a leading university, and he was a 35-year professor. He has named molecules. He is all about organics. I got him, put him on, you know, he and I formed a partnership relationship. We developed the first USDA certified organic products for use on cannabis, and Colorado was the only state to use it on. So wow. Colorado was the first place. And cannabis is not only marijuana, but it's hemp.
Yes.
So I was with the Rocky Mountain Hemp Society 2013, 2014, 2012. I was in Europe growing hemp. And I just, you know, I saw the benefits of hemp, and I even had I had a license where I could import CBD oil, and I brought in what they call cannabinoid acids A.
Yes.
Everything we brought in was non-decarboxylated because it's logical. Okay, if you take something natural like broccoli and you start to cook it, you're losing some of the value of the nutritional value of all of the enzymes, the nutrients, the compounds we don't even know exist, but when you boil them to a certain point, they're gone.
Yeah.
So I became like a raw vegan. And so I would just, my refrigerator looked like a grocery store shelf. And say, you've got nothing to eat. I said, I've got a whole refrigerator full of food.
You were the first person that introduced CBDA to me, and I started taking it. And this is really before I knew all of its benefits, but I could feel that it was different and working beneficially throughout my system, differently than the decarboxylized CBD. And I love that because there's endless stuff to learn and benefit from this plant. And that is just one of the many things that you've taught me. And I think that we can all go back to a little bit more raw here and there, because why denature things when we don't have to, when nature's perfect as it is?
That's a great point. And I love hearing that. We should like put that on the bulletin boards of our house, and maybe instead of our TV, we should put that on our TV and just paste it on it. But
Well,
I with you 1,000%. I mean, go back into history, go back to the Chinese, thousands and thousands of years ago, go back to Kazakhstan, where they say the plant came from. Okay, the Indian tribes there, they didn't, they did not, everything was organic then. They didn't have pesticides. They didn't have fertilizers even. So they would grow everything, with a composted living soil.
yep.
I got into the cannabinoid acid A because to me it was logical. I would take it from a nursery in one country, or a farm in one country, into Germany, to the place where all the hops and the malts were being extracted. And we would do a very gentle extraction. And if you look up supercritical CO2 extraction, which is what a lot of people are using, or they started off in this industry as using, the company that I used is the inventor of that.
Wow.
And so, again, I try to surround myself with the best people. I have a medical doctor who is a pharmacist also. He's a professor at medical school in Florida. And right after he got his degree, he went over to Africa for 4 years to study plant medicine. I mean, how many physicians do you know that do stuff like that? Not a lot.
Not enough. And when you look at the historical benefits that they used hemp and cannabis for, I mean, they're the same ones that we're finding through science are still the same benefits: anticonvulsant, antipsychotic, migraines, sleep, pain, tetanus, all these things that they were using anecdotally with success. We now have science to back up why, how, where, etc. We go back to nature and we have the solutions. We have the answers. And it's so simple, but what I love that you keep addressing is that the cleanliness of the plant and the soil is really important, because this plant is a soil remediator. And if we're dumping stuff on it to kill things that shouldn't, are overgrowing, there's a problem with the soil, not the plant. And we got to go back to organics, because our food should be organic. The less toxins we have, the less disruption we have in our system. And the easier it is to hear what's really supposed to be getting communicated versus all the toxins that are just like noise in our system and cause more imbalances and more extremes and more disease. And hemp, cannabis, is one of those plants that I'm big on organic and regenerative and sustainable, because if it's not, how are we going to continue? We can't have medicine making us sick, like you were saying. Can't have poisons in it.
Yeah, I mean, that's the pharmaceutical industry. It is, they come up with whatever they come up with. And I just know I'm not good with taking pharmaceuticals, any types of them. I always seem to have the weird reactions, or just I'm off a little bit and I can tell. Um, you know, with the natural growing processes that we know of, okay, we like don't get me wrong, there are a lot of people who are growing this organically and doing a great job. It's just they're not doing it on a large scale. And your huge dispensaries, like, I mean, there are, I mean, I have worked in 15 states on licenses. Okay, I get hired to get investors a license. Okay, so I know the answers that I want to give, and I know the answers that are going to get me the points on the application. And I always use the answers I want to give. And it's because I will say team members have combined knowledge and experience of 167 years cultivating. Boom.
Wow.
How do you beat that?
You can't.
Because if you're cultivating all kinds of plants organically, produce especially, you know how to do it. I mean, hemp is a weed. It's not like growing, heirloom tomatoes and, poinsettias. I mean, it isn't. It's not that hard to grow. It's just people overthink it. Yeah. And mentioned, it is a bioremediation plant. It's one of the only bioremediation plants. So the farmer growing marijuana outdoors, or let's just use the word cannabis and let's cover both. Cannabis is positively, it's marijuana and it is hemp. If you look at marijuana and take your hand out and put your right hand out, okay, that's marijuana, and then put your left hand facing you, your right hand away from you and your left hand facing you, that's marijuana and CBD. They're exactly the same molecule. They're just with pointing. If you look at them under crystallography, you'll see it's called cannabis sativa. L is hemp.
Yes.
Cannabis sativa is over here. We know that gets you high. We know cannabis sativa L. You can smoke hemp all day, and all you're going to end up with is a sore throat.
Well, that leads us into a study that you were just explaining to me about some detrimental effects of smoking marijuana, and some anecdotal benefits of taking CBD. Do you want to dive into some of those details?
Well, yes, we, there was a study that was released yesterday in Lancet, and it's, you and I discussed it briefly. And it's just about smoking in general, okay? It doesn't make any sense to put smoke in your lungs. It's like you don't go up to the muffler of your car and start inhaling the gas from that way. You won't for long, but and breathing in, go to Shanghai sometime and walk down the street there. Okay, it's like walking behind a bus. They've been wearing masks there since 1992 when I had my first visit there for business. Our lungs are very, very sensitive. They're highly vascularized. That is oxygen. Gosh, I mean, it's like, if you're under stress and you want to relieve stress really quick, and this was part of the Oriental philosophy that I got into when I got into the bonsai trees, the little miniature trees. Okay, bonsai, most people know them as. The Karate Kid popularized it. I designed the Japanese pavilion at Epcot, their garden in front. I was the person who designed that originally. I used to speak before 10,000 people during the flower festival and teach them bonsai. So I love that type of philosophy, but that philosophy is also one that leads you to meditation. And in meditation, it's so easy because you're carrying your breath with you all day long.
Oh, wow.
If I get under stress, I'll excuse myself from whatever I'm doing, or I'll just look away If I'm in a meeting, I'll say, excuse me, I need to go to the restroom. And I'll go into the restroom and I'll put my left hand on top of my right hand. I'll raise my, I'll put my shoulders back and I'll put my chin level. And what I'll do is I'll inhale deeply and make my stomach go out like a yoga breath. So you're filling yourself up with oxygen. And then I'll just slowly release it. And that is free.
Oh, wow.
And I just got high doing that. And I didn't get high, I got alive.
Oh, wow. Alive versus high. You can get high by being alive. You don't have to smoke
Positively.
cannabis to feel alive or high.
We have a sunset and a sunrise. Is there anything more beautiful? Can you look at a Picasso or a Matisse or a Renoir, and then you go out and look at the creator's handiwork as the sun is setting or rising? It's amazing. All we have to do, bliss happens. You just have to be able to see it.
Yes. And one of my favorite things is peace does not leave us. We leave it.
Positively.
Lean back into it.
And so, if we talk about, you asked me the question about marijuana, I get sidetracked, but that's film school, okay, in writing movies. I tend to do things circuitously, but I always round back up, okay, what we're talking about. Okay, there is a study, and it's about smoking. And I can read you just a little bit. I'm going to read you just 2 paragraphs from it, and this will give you an idea. Here are some of the chemicals that are released just by the process of smoking, whether it's tobacco, whether it's inhaling a cigar. I would think you'd have to inhale. I don't know if people inhale cigars because I'm not a cigar guy, but the vaping pen sensation that has hit the country, smoking marijuana, smoking tobacco. There's a chemical called naphthalene. Okay, it's associated with anemia, liver, neurological damages. Okay, acrylamide is another chemical that is produced just from smoking. Okay, so you have acrylamide, and then you have acrylonitrile, okay, which have all been associated with cancer and other major health issues, neurologically and cancer in multiple parts of the body. And the article goes on to say something about marijuana is on the rise in the United States, with a growing number of states legalizing it for medical and non-medical purposes, including 5 additional states in the 2020 election. And this comes from a principal investigator at Harvard University, their Division of Cancer Institute. Okay, so this is not like, somebody who isn't like gone through the mill and been vetted. The increase has renewed concerns about the potential health effects of smoke, which is known to contain more of the same toxic combustible products in marijuana and tobacco. Okay, we need to be cognizant of this stuff, okay? Because people, I am not going to bust my buddies, and I'm not going to tell you that I'm not like, Bill Clinton. I inhaled. Positively inhaled. I did it.
Man.
But I would tell you now, if I was going to do like something that has a psychoactive effect, or even with CBD, I do edibles and I put them under my tongue. Go to the mirror and stick your tongue out and look at the top, and you're going to see taste buds. Look at the under your tongue, and you're going to see blood vessels.
Yes.
Do you want to eat something and have it go through the digestive tract, which is like a long way? It's like a football field, okay? And you go through that, and then you go through the liver, which is like probably the best detoxifier in the world.
Mm-hmm.
type of machine we've ever been able to make. We can't make a liver, okay? And then it goes into the blood. Or do you want to put it under your tongue and have it go directly into the blood?
Yes.
I want it to go directly under the blood.
I would think so too. I've got a question for you from our audience. She's asking about dab pens, THC, that the dab pens increase the THC intake by 40%. What's your opinion on it?
I think it's one of the most dangerous things you could possibly do to your body. Couple of reasons why. If you look at dabs, number one, I've seen people making dabs before, and I've seen them making it in the kitchen of their house with the laundry in the living room. Okay, is that a PhD or is that a un-PhD? Is that a professional, clean, sanitary kitchen with HIPAA filters and airlocks that you need to keep it clean? No, it isn't. So the source is a major issue. Number two, why do you want to do dabs? But what you're doing is you're taking massive amounts of THC, but you're also taking, like a match head. A match head of dab has the equivalent. Think of all the chemicals that have been concentrated also, all the solvents that have been, all those solvents have been concentrated into the same thing that is holding the little THC that you're coveting so much. And there's another disease. So I would tell you, I wouldn't do dabs. There's no reason to. If you're up to a level where you need that much THC to get a buzz, you need to go off it for 90 days and then get high again on a joint, and don't smoke it. Do an edible. Okay. Dabbing is very, very dangerous. Like I said, the chemicals in it, the concentration, I don't even want to tell you how many joints it's equivalent to, but it's over 2,000. One dab, over 2,000 joints.
When you told me that, this was actually years ago, I was blown away because dabbing was just getting, in all the conventions that we were going to and stuff, like dabbing with the butane lighters.
Oh, yeah.
I was like, what is this? And since I'm not like seasoned in THC, I was staying clear from it because I thought, wow, this is, not only are they getting concentrated solvents and, petroleum products and the pesticides that it was grown with, and then like, how do you actually how do you feel high when you're toxic? Those two just don't seem to line up to me.
Let me give you one thing about temperature too. Okay, all of these chemicals that we're talking about, THC, CBDs, or any of the solvents that are being used to make like a dab, for example. And this is a good question, okay, because this goes into a lot of things that are problematic in this industry. Okay, dabs were just created a few years ago. When I first saw people doing dabs, man, they had glass stuff out with this big propane torch. And I said, what, is this guy going to do welding or is he going to get high? And I said, how do you carry the stuff around and not get caught? I mean, you can hide it in your car, but you're going to need you're going to need a suitcase to carry this with you. And they had them. They actually did. And
oh my gosh.
You just can't do stuff like that. And then there's something called cannabinoid hyperemesis syndrome, a real disease. Mm-hmm. There's massive numbers of people that are going to emergency rooms around the country, and doctors don't even know what the heck it is. Okay, on every license in the United States that I have worked on, the only medical disease that the medical director is asked is, what are the symptoms of cannabinoid hyperemesis syndrome? Can you recognize it? And how would you treat it? I've had personal experience with people dabbing in Colorado who I love to death. And I'm not going to tell them what to do. I'm just going to give them the knowledge, and then they're going to make their own decision. But, you know, when you leave on when I leave on Thursday and I go on a trip and I come back on Sunday and they're at the exact same spot on the couch with their friends, and all you see are pizza boxes building up, that's an issue to me. Okay, but we had one situation where somebody started having seizures, and they were serious seizures. And I didn't know how to stop it. And what he was telling me is, he says, well, you know, when I go and I go in the shower and I turn the water on really hot, the shaking stops and the tremors stop and the seizures stop. So I said, okay. And we took him in the bathtub. We put him in there. We had the water hot. Well, here's the problem. I mean, you got a water heater and eventually it runs out of hot water. And when it did, he started shaking again. We took him to the emergency room. They wrapped him in these really hot blankets that they had there. And he was there. And he was there for a day and a half. And they told him, they said, you really need to stay away from any type of THC product for at least 30 days. Mm-hmm. 80 would be better. 90 would be ideal, because that would get all of the THC stored in the fat cells of your body. Okay. Here's a little, one of my scientists that works for me, and he's pretty adamant on this. And, like I said, he's named molecules. So you're going to have to really ramp up your game to convince me that you're smarter than he is. Okay. He says that the body can only absorb 18% THC.
Oh, that's interesting.
That's what's biologically available for the body. So when these 21%, 31%, the higher the THC, the more they can sell it per pound. Mm-hmm. And we'll get into testing in just a minute. Okay. I'm really, really into this idea of testing. And you did mention this, and see, we're circling around to the 85%.
Oh, yes. Real quick, because we got a question. I want to make sure people understand dabbing. Is vaping different than dabbing? Is it the same consequence since they're using?
No, it's completely different.
Okay. We got a few things on our plate now. Dabbing, vaping, the 85%, and testing.
Okay, perfect. Go to the Journal of the American Medical Association the last 3 years. Okay, I have done tests with them where we have gone to, the last one we went to was 22 states. And we went to legal dispensaries. We got samples. We took them and sent them to 2 labs, one on each coast. I don't want to mention the names of the labs, but if I was pushed, I would. We took the labels off of the bottles and we would number them. Okay, this was published in JAMA, Journal of American Medical Association. It started like 5 years ago, and we've just been doing the same thing to see if it's gotten any better. It hasn't. Colorado is much better, and I will tell you, Colorado is the gold standard for testing.
Oh.
They really are. This one professor I was telling you and myself were the only non-Colorado residents who were on their pesticide committee for the Marijuana Enforcement Division. And the first meeting that we had, this professor had 400 or 200 chemicals removed from pesticides that could be used. Chemicals that could be used. So it got down to like there was nothing. Mm-hmm. Growers are going, wow, we have nothing we can put on that stuff or this stuff to take care of it. So they'd go into oils like neem oils, things like that. And that is better, but it's not going to, solve the issue. The issue is organic. Yes. Growing things with living soil. Why in God's green earth people are growing marijuana and hemp inside? And I know this company's going to be on my ass, and it's fine. They're growing it in Rockwell. Rockwell is frickin' fiberglass. Okay, we know what fiberglass does to our lungs because we've got this thing called mesothelioma that, half the world probably has from working for all those years in the military on ships and insulation in your house. Okay, so, the testing thing is very real. We go in, get testing, get samples. We look at the label that it says that's on it, and we send this off to these two labs, and we spend a couple of $1,000 on each test because there's no way in the world you can do an adequate test and charge $200. Not possible. There's 5 classes just of pesticides that would take you 2 weeks to test. And, somebody harvesting this wants to make money. They're not 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Okay, so 85% seems to be this magic number that keeps coming up. Okay, and all I can tell you is 85% contained products that were not on the label. So the label was not representative of what was inside the bottle. Okay, I want to also emphasize to people that there are the illegal market is 10 times bigger than the legal.
With the pesticides or just the
It's
the
10
plant?
times larger in what's sold.
Ooh.
So, okay, like in California, if you look at the amount of marijuana that's grown in California and the population of California, it would be every person in California would have to be getting stoned all day. Okay, the illegal market. So where does it end up? It ends up like taking this route through Nebraska, which is kind of tricky, or they end up going up north through Dakotas and stuff like that, or they just put it in the U.S. mail.
Right. Yes.
And they ship it. It goes all over the country. And, is there any regulations on that? None whatsoever. Okay. Are they using pesticides? The guy that's going to sell it to you is going to say, man, this came from the labs in California and how great it is and stuff like that. I want a certificate of analysis.
Yes. Yes.
I'm going to put anything in my body. So the 85%, Google it. It's real. You'll see your own studies, but don't go to Google. Go to Google Scholar so you can get into the science parts instead of the media parts.
Yes. Speaking of the high, we've got someone with a question that they've read that CBD can reduce the effects of the high if someone dabs or vapes and they get too high and that toxicity or too high is happening. Does CBD, can it help with the reduction to bring the high down to make it less, like spike less?
Okay, we're not talking about any scientific medical literature here. We're talking, in this particular case, okay, because I haven't found any. But I would tell you that my personal experience being around people and listening to people is that, okay, dabbing, you're not going to get that effect. Dabbing is like off the Richter scale in terms of the amount of THC. But if you are, let's say you smoke a sativa, and it's at its 18 percent, okay, and you're not used to smoking, or you are used to smoking but just not quite that high a THC, and somebody like me, if I smoke something like that, I'm going to be like the most paranoid human being you're ever going to meet, and I'm going to look at my to-do list and I'm going to write everything down and see all the things I have not done, and I'm going to freak completely out. So I don't do that. Will CBD make me calmer? Positively.
Oh.
The tongue. Under the tongue isn't, even the edibles. Take an edible, put it under your tongue, and just do the mindfulness, the breathing, and thank God that you're not going to have that feeling for a long time.
Oh, that's
out of your brain pretty soon.
Thank you. I think that's really important for parents to know too, that we've really hibernized and hijacked this plant to really just think that THC is the award-winning molecule. And it's just like you said, I never heard this, that 18% is all that we can biologically distribute throughout our body. And when you have more is not better. In fact, it becomes toxic. And that toxicity can lead to accumulation in your fat cells. And I think personally, other degenerative conditions too, neurologically. Some people we are noticing that even have genetic dispositions to addictions. It's some of this is genetic too. How about some of the health benefits of CBD? If someone's thinking, well, all the health benefits come from marijuana, it's medical, and the hemp plant doesn't have any. It's hemp. It doesn't have that big rock star THC. Are there health benefits just in the hemp plant?
Well, it's very interesting that you would ask that, but in I think it was 1999, and this is studies that had gone on for 8 years prior to that with a physician out at UCLA. And the federal government got a patent through the National Institute of Health, and this doctor was one of there were two doctors that were given credit for this. But the US government got a patent on cannabidiol as a neuroprotectant and antioxidant. Google it, look it up. It's real. They use the National Institute of Health, which is the largest research institute in the world. Okay? And they came up, and do you think that the government wanted to issue that patent? Hell no. The DEA used some of the same studies and twisted them around to keep it as a controlled substance. But they found that with tremors, with Dravet syndrome and Gestalt disease, the government issued GW Pharmaceuticals a patent, or not a patent, but the FDA approval on Epidiolex to treat those two diseases, which are extreme seizure disorders. Okay, and they've got, those medicines are real, they're on the market. There's another one called Sativex, which is also on the market by the same company. I worked with some professors at a major medical school, working with professional football players who, when they hit somebody, every time they hit somebody in the football games, it's like being in a car accident. They just don't realize it until they're like 50, in their 50s, and they're like walking with canes and they're shaking and doing all this stuff. And it's called traumatic brain injury. Okay. And there was a study done that the NFL Players Association, sponsored on CBD and cannabidiol as a neuroprotectant that means that it's going to help with tremors like Parkinsonian tremors with your body, but it's also going to do more things in your brain that we just don't know about yet. Mm-hmm. My feeling is I used to do these lectures on growing hemp, and I'd go around the country and we'd have like 4 or 5 states of Division of Plant Industry people that would come, and like there'd be 10 of us that would talk. And I noticed these guys, after the breaks, they'd go out and they were smoking these. I said, "What are you smoking?" "Oh, we're smoking hemp." And I said, "Why are you doing that? You're not going to get high from it." And I did that for a few months. And then somebody gave me a couple of like hemp, like pre-rolls. I brought them home and they sat on my desk for probably another month. And then I had a friend over and I said, "You know what? I can't talk about this stuff really unless I smoke one." So this particular person shared one with me, and I noticed it was on a Sunday because I wanted to make sure this was not going to interfere with my work day. On Sunday, I smoked half of one. And the first thing I noticed, and I always have described this, I got a sense of well-being. Mm-hmm. Okay, I was able to do accounting. I was able to do financial projections. I was able to write scientific articles. So my mind was not being psychoactive affected.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay, so but my body felt great. It felt like almost like a spring day. I would, and I know how crazy that might sound. Okay, so I said, "You know what? I want to do some studies on this." So we put together a group, and this has been repeated in 5 different countries, of people smoking hemp, CBD. Okay, They tend to not smoke cigarette. 25% of the people quit smoking cigarettes.
Bullseye. Someone just put that in the comments.
Yeah.
They quit smoking cigarettes because they had CBD to take and smoke.
Yes, because there's something psychological about that deal about lighting something and raising your arm and putting it to your mouth. We found that psychological study.
Wow.
Okay, but the idea was that they were smoking hemp, and after I think it was 30 days, and it was only 25 people in the one study. After 30 days, they quit smoking the hemp, and they had no withdrawal symptoms or whatever at all from it. So, you know, I'll just be honest with you. I look at the amount of diseases that THC can benefit from. And listen, when we're talking about terminally ill patients, I'll go the extra route and tell whatever works for them. But, you know, Donald Abrams, you know, he's like one of my gods, okay, from University of California, San Francisco. He tricked the National Institute of Drug Abuse in Mississippi to send him marijuana for his AIDS patients. And he would, like, the very first study, and you got to read this guy because he's 20 years. He's not a child. He's one of the people that when you go to a lecture hall, other doctors quote his literature. Okay. He is such a cool guy. He tricked the government and he said, look, I don't know what's happening, but these AIDS patients are eating, they're not throwing up, and I'm not having to give them so much opiates. We've gone from 10 opiates down to 3. You need to give me more money so I can prove that I'm making a mistake here. Did that for 20 years.
Highly intelligent.
So yes, there's a lot of things that it can help with, but let's separate some things out. Okay. And say that the guy or let's say that the brain doesn't develop until the age of 25 because there's been 20 years of studies on that. Mm-hmm. So we have to be careful with our youth. Vaping anything is bad. There's been a lot of the deaths that you saw and a lot of the terrible, terrible things that we saw with that happened in such a short period of time. Guess what? They're still happening. It just isn't newsworthy anymore. They already got the headlines. Okay? But a lot of the stuff I've seen stuff in Florida that will be from a California dispensary. It'll look exactly in the same packaging, everything, as a legal dispensary in California, vaping oils. But guess what? It's from China.
Oh.
All they did was mimic what was being done. So there again, how do you know if it's real? Certificate of authenticity. Demand it. If you walk into a dispensary and the person is in there and they're looking like really strange with, what should I take for my stage 4 colon cancer? And they look around and they go, look, see what they've got on the shelves, because they're going to sell you what they have in inventory.
Yeah.
They're not going to sell, and plus they've got no educational back. There is no state in the United States that requires any bud tender to have any type of medical education. Zero.
Wow.
Horrifying to me.
Yeah, especially because people are going in there with medical conditions because it's called medical marijuana. Yes.
And so they're saying, what should I take? And they go, oh, you want this, whatever you want. I don't want to mention names. And they go home and they get high and paranoid and they're sitting in the corner of their house and don't know what to do because they've never really smoked pot or marijuana. I see a great benefit for marijuana. I don't want to ever take that away. The THC component of it, even the THC component of hemp, hemp is allowed to have 0.3% THC or less. There is documentation that shows that THC has the ability to go into the CB1, CB2 receptors, and it's like a key that opens up that lock that allows all the CBDs, the terpenes, the myrcenes, the phytocannabinoids to do their job.
Yes.
How much THC do we need? I really don't know. I think it's ridiculous to keep it at 0.3% and then make the farmer burn his crop if it's more than that, because I don't even know what it takes to get high, but it's got to be 2-3%, which would be, you're looking at 100 times more.
Yeah, I agree. And just being in this industry, working with practitioners over the last 5 years, I've seen CBD, a full spectrum with the entourage effect, that 0.3% or less, work. It works. And just like you were saying with the National Institute of Health and the patents that they have on the antioxidants and neuroprotective properties, I've got to throw in there, don't wait till you're sick to start taking care of yourself. That also means it works as a preventative. And with a 300% rise in neurological conditions, why not take some preventative measures? I really don't think we have to wait until we're sick to start experiencing the benefits. They may not feel as much if you don't have pain, you don't know that it's working as an anti-inflammatory, but it is.
Well, that's the problem, is that the body only lets you know when it's out of wellness and you're sick. Why do you want to get to that point?
I don't know.
Why do you want to get to the point to where you're going to need whatever types of help? I'm big into plant medicines. I'm big into what we call nutraceuticals, not pharmaceuticals. Nutraceuticals are using plant products. It's not using any type of non-organic product. So, I hope we've helped people. I could talk about this all day, and we haven't touched any of the subjects that I'd really like to jump into, but I'm just so happy to spend this time. I don't know how much time we have or what we're at with our allotment. I just know that when I do radio shows, they usually say, we got to go, but we'll be back with Manny next week. And so I'm just happy to help people. Okay. If we have helped one person today, then this is the best day of my life.
Oh, we are citizens of this world, and that is why we're here, is to help people and plants and animals and the planet. This is one big network, and we all need to communicate and raise the bar. And we are at an hour, because this is, Manny, I always tell you, like, we get on the phone, and before I know, it's like an hour's gone by, and I haven't even gotten to the questions I want to ask you. So hopefully you'll come on again. And so just so the listeners know, Dr. Sandra Carrillo was supposed to be our guest today, and she had a family emergency, and I called Manny up, and he said yes on a dime to this. And that means so much to me, and for you to have an expert and an authority and someone that is so passionate about standards and is contributing to them for our safety of this industry in the products that we take. We have to have standards, and we have so much of those. We have those, and we have them because of people like Manny, who's absolutely insisted on them. That is a good place to say, what are your closing thoughts and comments before I bring you on, hopefully another time?
I just really enjoy this type of forum because it's relaxed. I'm not having to sit in front of politicians and say things that are only politically correct, even though I know what they're doing in the back behind our backs, because I sit in those meetings a lot too. So this is a perfect forum. We're able to be, we're sitting in a park, having lunch, talking.
Yes.
How great can that be?
Oh, and that's the whole idea, is a casual conversation that contributes to education and people doing things that support their health, healing, and prevention. Because, being sick is expensive, and it's distracting, and it's hard to be as productive when we're sick. All right, everyone. I guess it's time to wrap this up. So thank you for joining us. And remember to hemp your health, go out, smile at someone, love yourself, love others, and contribute to the health, healing, and prevention of humans, plants, animals, and the planets. The planets. We'll just start with the Earth planet.
Oh, we'll make planets. I don't think we should be able to go to other planets until we fix this one.
I think that is an excellent start. Let's start here. I love it. Thank you, everyone. Manny, thank you so much for joining us, saving the day, and sharing your wisdom and expertise.
You're welcome. I'll do it anytime. I love this. I'm very passionate about this, as you can tell.
I can tell. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Manny. We'll see you next week. Go hemp your health.